Well, good evening, everybody. I hope this is working. Let's go ahead. Just typical mic check, speed check. Let's just let me know how everything looks. Um, the internet is really slow in my area right now. It's outside of our control. There is absolutely nothing I can do about it. Um, but if you'll just let me know if you're getting a clear picture, if you're getting good sound. Okay, so everybody says so far so good. Okay, I'm just going to preface this because the internet issues in our area are so severe. I mean, we dropped from 70 megabytes per second down to 10. So it's really spotty, and I'm not sure how this is going to work. If things drop out, there's not much I can do about it, and that may be the end of it. So we're going to go ahead and just launch into this, but just understand if things cut out, there's nothing I can do, and that'll just be the end of the evening. So let's go ahead and start with a prayer. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. Our Lady of Victory, pray for us. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. All right, several things to jump into right off the bat. First and foremost, I want you to know that the um, the petition that I'm working on is ready to go. We've got a great list of endorsers for this effort, and for those who don't know what we're talking about, on Tuesday, that's our target date. We are planning on launching a White House petition that is going to ask Congress to investigate Catholic Relief Services. And the whole point of this White House petition is that we want Congress to look into whether CRS violated the Mexico City policy or not. So I created a landing platform for the petition. It outlines the problem. It states the petition. And I took that platform and I circulated it around to a bunch of people that I know. And what I did in circulating it around, I asked for people to endorse it, people and organizations. Here's who we've got so far. Church Militant, Regina Magazine, Roman Catholic Faithful, 1 Peter 5, and LifeSite News have all joined the Lepanto Institute in this petition. And individuals who are endorsing this petition, this call for Congress to investigate CRS, Dr. Alan Keyes, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for International Organization Affairs, Bob Marshall, former member of the U.S. or of the Virginia State House of Delegates, Dr. Diehl Hudson, president of the Morley Institute for Church and Culture, Michael Voris, founder and president of Church Militant, Chris Mangiaracina, former FBI money laundering investigator and current principal of CMMC Associates, Janet Smith, PhD, moral theologian, John Henry Weston, co-founder of LifeSite News, Stephen Brady, president of Roman Catholic Faithful, Liz Yore, attorney and international child rights advocate, Beverly Stevens, editor of Regina Magazine, Steve Skocek, founder of 1 Peter 5, George Neumayer, author of The Political Pope, Mark Lambert, Peter Kwasniewski, and Daniel Rabidin, who is a filmmaker. So those are the those are the ones who are endorsing this petition. And when we launch, I'll be putting out a press release, and all of those individuals, their organizations, I've asked them to put out articles, press releases, and that kind of thing, pushing and pushing and pushing for this petition to get signed by as many Catholics as possible. So it's going to be a full court press effort. and hopefully we get a lot of response. Because if we get 100,000 signatures within 30 days, Congress has promised that, or the White House has promised that we'll get an official response or an official update from the White House on this petition within 60 days. It's pretty awesome. So I'm looking forward to that. And let's see, let me go back to my notes. Here we go. So I got that going on. Earlier this week, I'm going to send this to you. Actually, before I get to that, um, I want to finish talking about CRS. I might as well just wrap that up. Uh, I'm finally wrapping. I've been in kind of catch up mode with a bunch of different little things. And so a lot of little things have got my attention. I have not completed the scripts for the final videos, the final reports on Catholic Relief Services. Basically, one of them is going to be a wrap up that kind of ties everything in together, and the other one is going to be a response to what little CRS has said regarding our reports. Uh, it's just a matter of putting it together and doing the video shoot and doing the editing. Um, as I said, just a lot of little things keep coming up and have been a distraction, and it's been difficult for me to really kind of sit down and put the final touches on these things and get them out. But I am going to be working on that. Hopefully, we'll get those out in the next week or two. We got an email from Patricia members, and Patricia says, "Hi, Michael. I wondered about the collection to CRS from a former local parish near where I live. And so I went through my church envelopes since I mail my donations into the parish. I came across a plain yellow envelope, and there it was, CRS, and the locations that the monies will be benefiting. I really got upset. There's also Peter's Pence. They slipped everything in our envelopes that are mailed out monthly to the laity. Since should we respond, or will you be doing that in a more professional approach to these envelopes and the information to the bishops?" So, Patricia, real quick, I'm going to answer that right now. Um, we have a letter to bishops that we have drafted. You will see this on the launching platform for the investigation of CRS petition. And the sample letter is something that you can just go ahead and copy and paste. You can drop it in the mail and get it off to your bishop as quickly as you can. All of that is going to be ready to go and fully prepared. So all you have to do is just get the text. In light of that, it's always good to do a personal follow up of your own anyway. We are one organization. We're kind of a persona non grata when it comes to the bishops. They don't like talking to us. So, as many individual Catholics that go out there and can tackle this kind of thing, that's really the best way to go, because it shows the bishops that it's not just me. There are other Catholics that are concerned, that are upset, that need answers. And quite honestly, their talking points just aren't going to cut it. They have to actually address the material instead of just glossing over it and repeating what CRS tells them to say. And yes, I will be emailing that out. The platform for the investigation, that's going to go out in an email on Tuesday. And when it goes out, you'll see everything there. The petition. There's also going to be sample letters to Congress. So you can drop a letter to your congressman and personally ask your congressman, please investigate Catholic Relief Services, and also the sample letter to bishops. So all of that's going to be there. You can take it all right there. Um, I did mention the CRS report from you, and one of the priests mentioned that other clergy are not bothered at all about condom use within the Catholic Church or elsewhere. You know, that's it's actually surprising to me in some regard that priests are open about this. I know everywhere that there are priests all over this country, all over the world, that really don't care about the use of contraception. They think that contraception is actually fine. They don't see the moral problem with it, and so they're not, as you said, they're not bothered about condom use within the Catholic Church. And so, in that regard, it even though I'm not surprised that they believe it, I am surprised that they vocalized it, that they actually said that they don't really care. It doesn't bother them because at the end of the day, there's still official church teaching, and to go against church teaching in a vocal manner, it should be. It just shows the boldness that these guys have now. They feel emboldened because they have their pope, they have their bishops, and they think that they've pretty much won the day. They're going to have a very rude awakening upon their own judgment day. I'm sad to say. So at this point, not certain what we should do or will be doing or addressing. Will you cover this on your Friday sessions with the inner circle? Just did. Thank you for keeping us informed on the CRS situation. God bless. Well, I appreciate the question. I'm glad that I was able to answer it in this format. I think that this is probably the best way to tackle that. And I hope I answered your question. Let's see. How do we approach our parish priests with this information? Well, that's a good question. I would actually go through the reports, and what I would recommend. And now, one thing that we want to do, and it's a large undertaking, but I think it will be worth doing once I actually do it. I'm going to put together a series of flyers that addresses it, kind of summary sheets for each report. And those summary sheets are going to hit the most damning evidence. And with those flyers, you should be able to print out in about 6 pages exactly everything that we discovered recently. And you can take those flyers and then hand them to your priest and say, Father, this information needs to be addressed specifically. In other words, the full information in these reports has got to be addressed, not just a blanket dismissal, not just a cursory glance over one or two issues in a very general manner, but and for for the love of everything good and holy, please do not patronize us by patting us on the head and saying, well, we have an oversight committee that covers all of this, and they do a very good job, and we know that they are not doing these things because we have an oversight committee. I'm sorry, but all this does is show how broken this oversight committee is. Because if they knew this information and approved it, they're complicit. More likely is the situation that they didn't know this information, they weren't given this information, and they made a decision based on limited knowledge of these projects. That's my guess. But oh, the patting on the head just drives me insane. Anyway, so moving right along, I want to show you. I'm going to post the link down here. Here you go. One thing that we did this week, we published an article, and the headline is, let me get to my article. Here we go. The headline is Catholic environmentalists promote pro abortion occult organization. That's the headline. We wrote this article because somebody anonymously sent us a PDF file of a bulletin that was put out by the Catholic Family Center for the Archdiocese of, or the Diocese of Rochester, New York. And it was dated April 17th, 2020. And on the very front page, at the very top of the right-hand column, there was something that said Pachamama Alliance. If you are looking for information on how you can take steps to lessen your environmental impact, the Pachamama Alliance can help. They put on a wide variety of educational programs, especially focusing on Project Drawn Down. They have 2 online sessions this upcoming week, Sunday and Wednesday. Follow the link below to register. this this was a very serious problem because what we discovered, they asked us about this. I actually did some research on the Pachamama Alliance back in February. And as I was looking at the Pachamama Alliance and seeing what it was all about, and trying to really grasp the network that it's participating in, we found it was actually participating with several Catholic organizations. That it is starting to make inroads in various social justice circles, environmentalist circles in the Catholic Church. So we thought, it would be worth it to put out a warning so that Catholics can recognize this is not a good organization. I mean, obviously, the name alone is enough to set off alarm bells. Pachamama, really? Mother Earth, the deity of Mother Earth as worshipped in South America? Well, as we were looking around, we discovered that the Pachamama Alliance, it's got, oh, where did my link go? Oh, there it is. It has formal ties with the Sisters of Mercy. In fact, this conference called Awakening the Dreamer was being put on at St. Anthony of Padua Church, and it was being sponsored by the Sisters of Mercy. In fact, two of the talks were being given by members of the Sisters of Mercy. The Catholic Climate Project, which is an offshoot of the Catholic Climate Covenant. We had actually written a report on the Catholic Climate Covenant a couple of years ago because one of their directors of programs was very active in promoting abortion and homosexuality. She was an avid supporter of Emily's List, which is extremely pro-abortion. Anyway, she lost her job after we did our report, but it showed kind of the problem that was going on there. Well, the Catholic Climate Project is very interesting because the leadership team, Jose Aguto, is the co-chair of the Catholic Climate Project, and he's one of the higher ups, a vice president at the Catholic Climate Covenant. Also, Paz Artaza Reagan is also a big person over there at the Catholic Climate Covenant. And then we've got a member of the Sisters of Mercy, Sister Marianne Comfort. Really? Comfort, Sister of Mercy? She's uh, she's on the leadership team of the Catholic Climate Project, and also Brenna Davis of the Ignatian Solidarity Network, which we have also uh, been very critical of because it got a $750,000 grant from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. So we're starting to see a pattern of these incestuous relationships where the tentacles from certain organizations start intertwining with various other organizations, and the network or the web of collaboration starts to show its roots. And so Catholic Climate Covenant or Project, which is connected to the Catholic Climate Covenant, connected to the Sisters of Mercy, connected to the Ignatian Solidarity Network, all of which are working towards the promotion of the Pachamama Alliance. And what did we find that was wrong with the Pachamama Alliance? Well, we found that in 2015, it invited Rebecca Griffin of NARAL Pro Choice California to speak at its May monthly gathering to discuss abortion rights and holding crisis pregnancy centers accountable for blocking women from access to abortion and contraception. So this was an official act of the Pachamama Alliance, which means Pachamama Alliance is itself fully pro-abortion. We went through a few other aspects just to show that they were promoting contraception, and it was very clear. Another thing that we discovered is the Pachamama Alliance, not surprisingly, given the name, Pachamama Alliance places a heavy emphasis on shamanism and training in pagan occultism. Much of the emphasis stems from the influence of Pachamama's co-founder and board member John Perkins. And Perkins has written several books on occult techniques, such as physiopsychonavigation, which I don't even know what that is. he talks about communing with animal spirits, and he also encourages the use of a drug called ayahuasca, which is a hallucinogenic drug. So that's Pachamama Alliance. And it's, like I said, it's gaining its inroads and it's starting to form its network with a lot of Catholic collaborations. And it's all very concerning because of what's going on in Rome. Because of this week, as you may or may not know, wasn't something that was really on my radar because I don't really care about this stuff. But apparently, this is the 5th anniversary week of Laudato Si, and they're having a week long of celebrations or something. I started running my air conditioning well, just because it was warm out. Anyway, so that's the article that we put out this week, and I'll constantly keep you updated on other research and articles that we're going to put up. We've got a couple of other projects we're starting to initiate as we are winding down this Catholic Relief Services project. Hopefully, we can hit the ground running and move in a couple more broader directions and get a few other things done. Which leads me to tonight's topic, which is Norma McCorvey. Now, I titled tonight's talk Truth and Consequences. And the reason I wanted to focus on this is that a couple of days ago, a filmmaker who is working with Hulu and FX announced that he's going to be publishing a documentary that he had done on Norma McCorvey, also known as Jane Roe. And he claims, and some of the footage that he shows in the trailer seems to support his claim, he claims that Norma recanted her pro-life beliefs on her deathbed, and that he claims that she was acting and that she never really was fully pro-life. Now, these are all claims. When that information came out, I went on Facebook and I said, if this is true, this is a huge betrayal. And the next thing I know, I get assailed by pro-life activists from all over, including Troy Newman, who jump on my wall and start telling me Norma was always pro-life. She was fully pro-life. There was never any doubt about that. She was fully Catholic. She died Catholic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Without having seen any of the video footage, they jumped right into a defense. Now, I do investigative work for a living. I'm constantly looking into every angle of every facet of whatever it is I'm investigating. I gather all my facts and I put them together so that the facts themselves cannot be disputed. And every single time I do a report on something like Catholic Relief Services or on the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, the next thing I know are the blanket denials and the rush to defend is what comes from the side that believes that CRS and CCHD and the USCCB and the bishops would never do anything wrong. This is a serious problem. I would never hold my enemies to a standard that I was not willing to hold my friends to. Let me repeat that. I would never hold my enemies to a standard that I would not hold my friends to. In other words, there's no way I'm going to rush to the defense of Norma McCorvey until I have a chance to examine the evidence. That's key. It's extremely important that we examine the evidence for several reasons. Number one, we have no idea what Norma McCorvey said on film. She is a fallible human being, or was, just like every other human being on the planet. The example that I used when I was talking about why it's important for us to take a step back and not to rush to defend, just as nobody should rush to judge either, but we should not rush to defend, because if we do, then once the truth comes out, if it turns out that Norma McCorvey actually did say these terrible things, and that she really did recant and repudiate her pro-life position, if that is the truth, then those who rushed to defend are going to look foolish. They're going to look very foolish. In fact, I will note that a lot of the same people that rushed to defend Norma McCorvey were the same ones, in some senses, who rushed to condemn the boys from Catholic Covington High School when that Indian went out and lied about beating a drum, or about them calling him racial names and saying, build that wall and everything else. And their faces got plastered all over CNN and Newsweek. And they were castigated by celebrities, and they had death threats. We can't rush in. The old saying, fools rush in, is very true. We shouldn't rush to judge. We shouldn't rush to defend, especially when we don't know what we don't know. And we don't know for a fact that Norma McCorvey didn't say terrible things on film. We don't know that. Is it likely? Who can say? I didn't know her. There are some who did. And those who knew her are saying things like, well, I knew Norma McCorvey and she was solidly pro-life and she was fully Catholic. This is fake news. That's foolish. You can say things like, I knew her. She was fully Catholic throughout the time that I've known her. I would be shocked if this was true. That would be okay. But to call it fake news, you're setting yourself up. You're setting yourself up. It's not fake news until you can prove it's fake news. So, what happens? These pro-life activists rush to defend. They won't hear reason because I explained, look, we have to look at the facts. We have to look at what's going on. We have to get a sense of the truth before we can go in and make a proper defense. And what I got hit with, especially from Troy Newman, was believe what you want. How flippant and foolish. I'm sorry, but it was. And I like Troy Newman. He's a friend of mine. But it is foolish to just dismiss what could very well be a real fact. And if it turns out that Norma McCorvey said those terrible things, it's a fact we're going to have to deal with. We're going to have to deal with it. What do we do with it? I'll get into that in a minute. But there are some other big Catholic names if the interview is true. See, that's the thing. Now, I don't expect that Norma will say a lot of things that are very true in this interview. For instance, she said that she was paid to be pro-life and that it was all an act. I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think that she did experience a true conversion of heart. And I think that she was hoping for financial support, but not doing it for the money. I think that that's probably not true. There was a financial element. She was getting paid to go out on a speaking circuit. She did do fundraisers that she benefited from. Those things are facts. In fact, I'm going to read to you a little bit from a Vanity Fair article here that I found from, or a friend of mine sent to me from 2013. Um, and it's very interesting. It's very enlightening because this article from Vanity Fair is 7 years old, and it's 4 years before this interview was done. She died in 2017. She really felt guilty and had that conversion. She was pro-life. See, that's the thing. I believe that. I do believe that. Which means that if she said something on camera which contradicts that, like for instance, the claim is that she said it was all an act, that she was never pro-life. If she said that, what we have to do is look at the footage, look at the context, and try to break it down and make sense of it. Because my guess is that there's going to be a lot of creative editing of the film, which means it becomes a bigger story. We have to examine the film. We have to look at how it broke down. We have to look at how certain cuts are made. A lot of times, and yes, this is a money making scheme. That's the other thing I was going to bring out. But a lot of times, what these film producers will do, they'll do creative cuts where, for instance, you see my face, we're talking, and I will start to say something, and I'll go on a story, or I'll go on a certain tangent about something, and then it'll switch while I'm talking. It'll jump to the interviewer, and the interviewer will be sitting there nodding their head and mm-hmm. Oh yeah. You know, and then they'll ask a question. Well, what about blah 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 blah? And then off camera, you'll continue to hear the person being interviewed, and then they'll go back and they'll finish the statement or finish the quote on camera. And in the editing room, what they did, they will have spliced a couple of statements, cut out the middle part that may have given some raw context, and made the statement say something that it didn't actually say. That's how creative editing works. Norma's dead, so she has no way of corroborating whether she actually said these things or not. So it's a very interesting kind of situation. But before any defense is made in public, we have to see the footage. We have to see the evidence. We can't just outright dismiss it, because if he puts out a raw, uncut segment where she starts from beginning to end, says, I'm Norma McCorvey, I am of sound mind and body, and I am here to tell you that I was never pro-life. In fact, it was all an act. It was all a joke. I made it all up. I did it for the money, and I'm firmly pro-abortion, and I'm sticking to that. I would like to see Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton or whomever put into office so that they can entrench abortion rights. If she was on film saying something that wretched from start to finish, where there are no cuts, I don't know how you can dispute that. That would be very solid evidence. And the only thing beyond that would be what they call a deep fake. And a deep fake footage is where they manipulate the camera, or the footage in the image, to look like someone is saying something that they are not. Um, and in a deep fake, they usually get a voice actor or somebody else to superimpose the voice with the manipulated image. They're getting harder to spot. It's possible to spot it. You can still see a deep fake after it's done. So if that's the case, then that would be the defense. But we have to have the evidence. We have to have the proof. So again, rushing to defend without having the facts is foolhardy. Let's see here. So, what I want to say about this, regardless of whether Norma McCorvey repudiated her position on life, whether she changed her stance or went on camera just to say whatever the heck she wanted to say in a salty way, or whether it was all fake and all manipulated footage just for the sake of drumming up a story, it doesn't change a thing for us. Doesn't change a thing. We continue to fight. We continue to point out the true facts regarding abortion. Whether Norma McCorvey changed her mind makes no difference. Makes no difference. So, why do I think it's being released now? Why are they doing this? Well, as someone mentioned earlier, uh, it's a money making. Patricia, as Patricia mentioned, it's a money making scheme. It's a money making scheme. The thing is, it took a long time for this indie filmmaker to put it all together, and he's looking to maximize profits. He had juicy information, something nobody has heard yet, something nobody knows. And it's a big topic and it's a big controversy and it's going to get a lot of coverage. So it's juicy news, it's juicy information. So if you're an independent filmmaker, how do you maximize your profits? Well, you go to a couple of you try to shop it around. You go around to a few different studios and you say, or distribution sites, whether it's a television station or Netflix or whatever, and you say, I have this really, really juicy documentary. I think it's going to cause a big splash. It's going to get a lot of attention. And I would like to sell you the rights to this documentary. And so he shops it around. There's a bidding contract war. Various agencies say, okay, we'll pay you this much for it. And he goes back to this other one and says, they told me they'd pay me this much. How much are you willing to give me? And they say, well, it's pretty controversial, but I think it's going to get a lot of attention to our platform. So we'll pay you, a half again as much. And so the contract bid goes that way. And he makes a decision. He says, okay, we'll go with it this way. And that's how he gets his money. That's how he gets paid. So there's a profit motive or a profit motive in regard to this particular documentary. On top of the fact that it's being released in an election year where abortion is a key issue, so it's going to really make a lot of impact. She died in 2017. This film was done at the end of 2016. That's 4 years ago. It doesn't take 4 years to produce a documentary. I know that because I was in one. And it was an independent documentary, basically a very small documentary team did this documentary, and I was in it, and it took them about a year. But with this, they know that this is an election year. They know that Donald Trump is highly scrutinized by the pro-abort left. And so they're trying to maximize profits. They're trying to maximize coverage. They're trying to make it a big issue in an election year where abortion is a key issue. That's why they waited until now. It's all about maximizing profits. So, yep, that's right. They held back until an election year. So I want to talk about this Vanity Fair article. I'm going to go ahead and post a link to it so that you can see it also. There you go. There's the link. I'm just going to read to you a few excerpts because it does put a lot of this into perspective. The tag at the opening of the article says she appeared to be the perfect plaintiff in a case that changed America's political landscape, Roe v. Wade, decided by the Supreme Court 40 years ago this month. That was 2013. But Norma McCorvey, now 65, was never what she seemed, neither as the pregnant Texas woman who won fame as an abortion rights icon, Jane Roe, nor as the pro life activist she would become. This article is very interesting because it's almost like the perfect setup for this documentary. It says, in truth, McCorvey had long been less pro choice or pro life than pro Norma. And she has played Jane Roe every which way, venturing far from the original script to wring a living from the issue that has come to define her existence. Quote, I almost forgot. I have a $1,000 fee, she texted in August in response to a request for an interview. Told that she could not be paid, she texted back, then we won't speak. So the claims that Norma had a mercenary side to her, that now this is let me be clear about something. There are a lot of very popular speakers who have a speaking fee that won't speak unless the fee can be met, only because they have a high demand. It's a typical tactic of high demand speakers to set their fees high in order to keep their appointments low. Because they don't want to spend 365 days out of the year going on the road and giving talks for, a couple $100 here and there. She had a fee of $1,000. That's actually not that much. I have a speaker's fee that I typically set at $1,800, but I will go as low as $500. I actually set a very low bar when it comes to people wanting me to come out to speak, because I think it's more important to talk about the issue than it is to charge people money. And I'm also not in very high demand anyway. But she had a $1,000 fee for as a speaker. So that actually goes to the talking point of the documentary, where they say that Norma McCorvey was a bit mercenary, that she was a mercenary who was in it for the money. I don't know that that's entirely true, but there is, from what I could read in the Vanity Fair article, there were certain elements that did speak to kind of a focus on money for her. She never had a lot, but money always seemed to be a little bit of an issue. The article, I jumped down quite a bit, and then the article says, in the spring of 1995, McCorvey was working at Dallas Women's Clinic on Markville Drive called A Choice for Women when Operation Rescue, a Christian group devoted to making abortion illegal, moved in next door. Will I do 250? It depends on where and when. We do have to cover some expenses too, so send me an email and we'll talk. The move seemed a deliberate provocation, although Flip Bennon, then the national director of Operation Rescue and an evangelical minister, attributed it to the work of God. When the Associated Press asked McCorvey for a comment, she said, I'm horrified. But right away, instantly, Benham recalls, McCorvey would come over and ask us to pray for her. She began to see me as someone who could help her work things out. The two began talking about their pasts and then about the Bible. Before long, says Benham, they were calling one another Flipper and Miss Norma. In July, McCorvey accepted Jesus as her savior. In August, in Garland, Texas, Benham baptized McCorvey in the backyard swimming pool of a member of his congregation. Pro-life activists were exultant. The poster child has jumped off the poster, the head of Texans United for Life observed at the time. The hyperlink was declared down by, oh, really? Huh. Publicly, the pro-choice movement more or less shrugged. McCorvey's former lawyer, Sarah Weddington, said, quote, all Jane Roe ever did was sign a one-page legal affidavit. But Charlotte Taft, the women's rights advocate, regrets that the pro-choice movement did not make McCorvey feel more needed and more special. And she says evangelical religion provided Norma with something the pro-choice movement could not, the comfort of absolute truth. She got to know she is right, says Taft. There's something else in it for McCorvey, something special, as Gloria Allred points out. Quote, it's a career choice as well, end quote. After resigning her position at a choice for women and shuttering her second foundation, McCorvey helped to create a new Texas nonprofit, Roe No More Ministry, devoted to undoing all that she had previously stood for. It was Roe versus Roe. A few years later, according to a document in her files, McCorvey indicated that she received a salary of $40,000 annually from Roe No More Ministries. In addition, Benham said he saw to it that, quote, she and Miss Connie had enough money, maybe $200 a week, end quote. Now, I'm going to pause there real quick. Miss Connie was Norma McCorvey's live-in lesbian partner for many, many years. There's a claim that after Norma was baptized, that even though she continued to live with Miss Connie, that they had changed their relationship from a lesbian one to a chaste and celibate one. I don't know the truth of this. I don't know. I have no reason to doubt directly that Norma McCorvey had ended her lesbian relationship. But the fact that she continued to live with Miss Connie even after the conversion is problematic at best, or at best, it is problematic. That I'll just leave it at that. Anyway, she was continuing to live with her longtime lesbian partner. McCorvey received more than Thomas Nelson, a Christian publisher, bought the rights to retell her story in 1997. Quote, she got $80,000 from the book, says Benham. I helped work out that deal. Won by love, laid out a life that, after profane beginnings, was in full compliance with evangelical ideals. The born-again McCorvey was now appalled by abortion and by homosexuality. Although the McCorvey continued to live with Connie, she described their relationship as having turned platonic. McCorvey's daughter Melissa recalls that McCorvey would introduce Connie by saying, "This is my aunt," or "This is my godmother," or "This is my cousin." There's an issue. I think that there was a very strong lack of prudence in allowing that to continue. A very strong lack of prudence. For one thing, it put her in a very difficult position because she would have to introduce this woman as something that she wasn't. And I think that anytime you introduce a lie and you perpetuate a lie, it's like corrosion in bronze. It only continues to grow. There's nothing that you can do to get rid of corrosion once it starts. In 1998, McCorvey redefined herself yet again, converting to Roman Catholicism after instruction by Father Pavone of the organization Priest for Life. At McCorvey's first communion, a priest spoke of, quote, her complicity with evil of Roe and her subsequent transformation. McCorvey saved copies of the homily. In speech after speech, her, quote, event objectives, as she was instructed in 1998, or a speech at a Christian pregnancy center in South Carolina, were twofold. Quote, glorify God in all that we do, raise lots of money. Elsewhere, McCorvey noted that in 1999, she earned $25,200 in honoraria alone. I don't know what kind of salary she was pulling. So a lot of this information is very spotty, and I do not fault anybody for collecting fees for going around and giving talks or even raising money for crisis pregnancy centers. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, we want to glorify God, but we also need to raise the funds in order to continue the fight against abortion. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So the way that this was framed was to make it look like it was just a big money making deal. But this is also the same way that the new documentary is being framed. So in order to counter what the documentary is doing, we have to have all the facts. I'm reading this because this is giving us kind of an insight into where this is going. As McCorvey traveled, her partner was generally by her side. Quote, I never go anywhere without Miss Connie, she wrote to a Catholic organization that had invited her to speak in New Zealand in 2000. The two flew together. In July 2004, Gonzalez suffered her stroke. 2 months later, according to a letter from her lawyer, McCorvey made arrangements to have yet another new foundation, Crossing Over Ministry, take ownership of the Dallas home she shared with Gonzalez. The house had recently been appraised at roughly $80,000. Crossing Over Ministry was a Catholic group devoted to reversing Roe v. Wade. It is now dormant, as in 2013 was dormant. Oh, the liberals make everything ugly. They absolutely do. Now, here's where the story kind of takes a turn. All right. So, all of that was kind of a setup for what will definitely appear to be a rift and some kind of misgiving that she had with the pro life movement. This is going to be the key because I think that this part is going to give us the most insight into what we can expect from this documentary. The article says McCorvey has often seemed more comfortable with foes than with allies. She has many times fired and rehired her current lawyer, Alan Parker, no matter that he works for her pro bono. Parentheses. In an email she sent him in 2005, she called him a user and said that he would no longer be her mouthpiece. Close parents. So if he wasn't getting any money, but he was acting as a mouthpiece for her. Why would she call him a user? And I think that she may have called him a user because he was using her name and he was making a name for himself based on her history. Maybe not even necessarily her work, just who she was, the very nature of who she was in history as the plaintiff that brought about abortion in this country. Um, the article goes on, it says McCorvey has alienated other pro life partners too. That's an interesting statement because that seems to be what she's saying in the trailer of the documentary. This is a quote from Flip Benham. She just fishes for money. She just fishes for money, says Flip Benham, the man who led her to the pro life side. Now, I don't know where that quote was made. I don't know if there was more context to it because it's just one 5-word statement. That's not enough to go on. And we don't even know that it was properly applied to McCorvey. He doesn't say McCorvey just fishes for money. It just says she. He could have been talking about Gloria Allred for all we know. But assuming a semblance of journalistic integrity here, let's say that Flip Benham said that about her, said she just fishes for money. What if he was talking about it in terms of fishing for money in order to help, crisis pregnancy centers? So context matters. Just using that one line, and I've been taken out of context in, articles before when liberals just take one snippet of one word without the rest of everything that I said. Uh, it can change the meaning of what you were talking about, and that could very well have happened here, but we don't know that. According to Father Frank Pavone, McCorvey now subsists on free room and board from strangers and, quote, a few $100s here and there, end quote, from his church. Roe has been her life, but it's no longer much of a living. Some of the things that I've seen from individuals within the pro life community over this documentary on social media seems to indicate that that was true, that she was basically subsisting on the charity of her friends in the pro life movement. Jason Jones said that she slept on her couch in his basement for some time. They brought her into his home. They let her stay there for a while, and that they had given her money. There are others that had indicated that yeah, they wound up giving her money in order to help keep her going. Um, so there seems to be some truth to this statement that she subsists on free room and board from strangers and a few $100s here or there from his church. That seems to be true. If it is, it also is reflected in the trailer that I saw for the documentary because in the trailer, um, they talked about how she had some misgivings, that she felt used. And again, this is why it's important for us to watch the full documentary. If she felt that way, why did she feel that way? What was going on in her life, and how did things get to that point? And, there are a lot of questions that we could ask, but it does seem in this particular statement that there was something going on, that maybe things weren't all well and good towards the end of her life. And then the last clip that I pulled from this article says, still there remains the big temptation on the pro life side to view this person as a trophy, said Pavone. To view this person as a trophy, a big temptation on the pro life side to view this person as a trophy. This past November, McCorvey received $1,000 to appear in a Florida television ad paid for by Randall Terry, the founder of Operation Rescue, who ran unsuccessfully as an independent for election in the U.S. House of Representatives from Florida. So, what do we do with all of this? All of what I read to you from the Vanity Fair article gives us the background that we need to try and put this picture together. A lot of pro-lifers who knew Norma McCorvey gave a lot of statements, and some of it seems to be kind of blunt and obvious. Others, maybe a little bit of a whitewash. Somewhere in there is going to be the truth. And tomorrow, the Hulu channel on the internet is going to be issuing or publishing the documentary. It's being aired tonight on FX. Tomorrow you can watch the repeat on Hulu. So tomorrow I'm going to watch it. I'm going to look into what she said. I'm going to pay very, very close attention to the edits because if I see any creative editing, I'm going to call shenanigans. Um, but I'm going to let you know exactly what I find out. I'm not going in there with any expectations. Um, if she did recant her pro-life and Catholic convictions, it's a very sad thing. On the other hand, it's a truth that we may have to deal with, and we shouldn't whitewash it. Just like Catholic Relief Services shouldn't be whitewashing the stuff that we find about them. When we find things that are going on with Catholic Relief Services and we write our reports and we dot all our I's and cross all our T's, and we submit these reports, I expect a proper response to the information, not just a blanket, well, we're a good organization and we do all this good work and we have these structures in place. Nobody cares about that. No one cares. All those structures and platitudes that you keep talking about with regard to your pro-life credentials doesn't mean a hill of beans if we find your people handing out condoms. So if I find your people handing out condoms and I've got photographs and I show it to you and you say, well, look at all the good we do, then you've automatically shown me that you're biased and disinterested in actually knowing the truth. As pro-lifers, as Catholics, we have an obligation to want to know the truth also. So when it comes to this documentary, whatever the truth may be, we have to be ready to accept it for what it is. Maybe there's some way to explain it. Maybe she wasn't in her right mind at the time that she went ahead and um, gave the interview. Maybe the pain and the drugs and, you know, people go through all kinds of difficulties and struggles in their last moments, and the demons are all over someone that they want to drag to hell in their last moments. That's when the attack is the most vicious. So it's entirely possible that she gave those statements in a moment of weakness. If she did, if she gave those statements at all. But if she gave the statements, that is a truth that we have to admit. It doesn't mean that we can't explain it. It doesn't mean that we can't account for it. And we should continue to pray for her soul. Her name is attached to the worst thing this country has ever done. So she has a lot to account for, a lot to atone for. And we should constantly be praying for people like her. Because if we don't, who will? Certainly not the pro aborts that used her. So we have to have truth in journalism, absolute truth, whatever it may be. You follow that trail all the way to the end, all the way. And you admit whatever you find. That's how I handle all of my investigations. I have no expectations with anything that I go into. There was one time I almost did not conduct an investigation. That was with regard to the Salesian missions. Somebody wrote in, they said, hey, Lepanto Institute, love your work. Could you look, what do you know about the Salesian missions? Are they a good organization to give to? I almost wrote them back and said, you know what? They've got a great reputation. I'm fully supportive of them. I'm sure that everything that they do is fine. Before I sent that email, I said, no, don't just go on reputation. You have an obligation. Somebody asked you a question. You have an obligation to follow up. And I said, okay. So I started and I did my research just as I do for anything else. And what I found was awful. And I went down that rabbit hole. I tried going through the proper channels in order to get answers. Nobody wanted to talk to me. And so I published my report. We have to pursue the truth, regardless of the consequences. Regardless of the consequences. Because the truth is the most important thing. God hates lies. No matter whether we're trying to, if it's a difficult truth that we don't want to embrace, that we don't want to admit. There was an example that I was going to tell you earlier. Suppose a man had been married to his wife for 25 years and they had a beautiful marriage and lots of kids. And one day, someone shows up with a videotape and says, I caught your husband cheating on you. And they give the videotape to the wife. Well, the wife's first reaction is going to be to laugh. Oh, come on. He would never do that. We have a wonderful marriage. We have all these kids. Everything's great. There's no way this would happen. Now, video footage can be doctored. Things can be manipulated. But if the evidence shows a hard truth, you have to confront it. You have to confront it. And when the preponderance of the evidence shows that there is a logical conclusion that something improper took place, then it is incumbent upon the one who is the subject of the investigation to address it and to explain it. That husband, whether he cheated, has to explain the footage. Has to. If there is an explanation, or he has to fess up. For us as pro-lifers, Norma McCorvey is dead. We can't do anything about that. We can't answer for her why she said the things she did, if she said them. But it will be incumbent upon us to either accept the truth for what we see, or something else. Or there's something else that happened, whether it's creative editing or a deep fake or something along those lines. But at the end of the day, it is incumbent upon us to seek and embrace the truth. And that's it. That's it. Somebody just wrote in. Let me see. Nancy says, Michael, would it not be plausible that she was paid to recant? Her path through different worldviews might have been her attempt to deal with her inner conflicts. Then she might have sold out to the highest bidder. That's possible. It seems implausible that someone who is actively dying, that they are dying, that any amount of money would be able to pay them off. Because what good is it to have $1 million in the bank account if you've got 3 months to live? I don't see the benefit there. Is it possible that that she was coerced in some way, manipulated? I think that all those things are possible, especially when somebody's in the act of, in the act of dying. As someone is dying, your mind goes in all kinds of different directions. Now, I've never actually talked to somebody who is dying other than my grandfather. And he was quite lucid when he died. He did some odd things. Like I saw him at one point just kind of reaching for something. There was nothing there. So I didn't understand that. But he didn't say anything odd, and he certainly didn't say anything out of character. He didn't speak much towards the end of his life, but he did speak, and when he did, he was fully lucid. His last words to me, the night that he died, in fact, just a few hours before he died, I was in the room with him, I was praying with him, and I said, Bappa, I love you. And he looked at me and with every breath responded, I love you too. And it took, I love you too. Really a lot of effort to say it, but he said it. Nothing out of character. But those who have a heavy burden are going to be very, very tormented at the end of their life. And I can't imagine the kind of torment that Norma McCorvey must have been going through. It's possible she recanted and then even flipped after that. I don't know. I don't know. But I do think we have an obligation to examine the facts and to examine the evidence and to see what we can find out. And that's it. That's it. For the Salesian report, let me pull it up for you. I'll just give you a link here. Hold on 1 minute as I pull it up. Sorry, my internet is very slow right now. Very slow. Okay. And here you go. There's the report on the Salesian missions. You can take a look at the information there. And if you need to know anything else about it, just let me know. Send me an email. Okay, why don't we go ahead and close with a prayer? In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. Our Lady of Victory, pray for us. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Good night. God bless you all, and I hope to see you next week.